in which he couldn't set his car clock after a time change in the fall. Belichick, of course, now under pressure to learn technology because of what's happening with the COVID-19 pandemic and the draft being held indoors from house to house. And he said, look, I don't know where I was 4 weeks ago. I don't even know if you'd call it the bottom floor. Maybe it was the basement, but I'm coming along. He shouted out the IT department for getting it done. And he said, look, in many ways, it's still going to be the same. We're going to have to find different ways to communicate, but we'll be able to do that, and we should get a handle on it. Of course, there'll be a test draft to make sure that everyone, all 32 NFL GMs, have their hardware running properly, and maybe, just maybe, Belichick won't need extra help. For the first time since January the 4th, when the Patriots lost to the Tennessee Titans in the opening round of the playoffs, we got an opportunity to talk to Patriots head coach Bill Belichick via conference call. The call was supposed to be about the NFL draft, and that's largely what it was. But considering we haven't spoken to him since Tom Brady left New England for Tampa Bay, I felt compelled to ask Belichick if he wanted and thought that Brady was going to come back. And he said, Mike, it's water under the bridge. And right now, all our energy and our focus is on making ourselves as competitive as we possibly can be for the upcoming season. Then I asked him, were you surprised he left? There was a long pause, and then he said, I think we've already covered that. Of course, in his opening remarks, Belichick did say that we'll be talking about Brady for years, maybe even decades, for all that he has done for the National Football League and the Patriots. For the first time in 2 decades, the Patriots will begin the season with someone other than Tom Brady as their starting quarterback. Of course, Brady taking his talents to Tampa Bay. The good news for New England, they know the potential replacements pretty well, at least currently on the roster. Bill Belichick addressed Jared Stidham and Brian Hoyer in a conference call on Monday, saying both Josh McDaniels, the offensive coordinator, and Belichick are quite comfortable with both players. Hoyer now in his 3rd stint with New England, and of course Stidham just wrapped up his rookie year. And he said, yes, it's going to be a different situation for both guys, considering the fact that, well, neither was competing for the starting job a year ago. This time there will be a competition, Belichick said, and it's important, he said, to get those guys comfortable, to highlight what they do well. He said, from that standpoint, nothing changes for us because that's what we did with Brady for the last 20 years.
Were you surprised? Because I didn't see this one coming.
I was surprised, Kay. I honestly was. And my initial reaction was how crafty from both sides. You know, there's an art to all of this. And the Bucks couldn't speak directly to Gronk because his rights were still owned by the Patriots. That's tampering. Bruce Arians can't speak directly to Tom Brady about this because you're not allowed to talk about football things during the offseason, the CBA rules. But Brady, he could talk to Gronk. And Gronk, he could talk to the Patriots, and things came together from there. I'll tell you this, what was really interesting about this was because of the current situation in the country and the NFL rules with the climate on travel and social distancing, the Buccaneers had to get approval from the Patriots to let them get a physical on Gronkowski. The Patriots said, yeah, come on, get someone. So the Bucks hire an independent physician up in Boston where Gronk is, and Gronk gets a physical from a doctor that the Bucks didn't even know and weren't even very familiar with. And they said, yes, he's passed. They're taking the word from the Patriots that Gronk is good to go, and he is. But Gronk, no stranger to Brady and absolutely no stranger to Tampa. He had a home there that he lived in, a 4,700 square foot home in South Tampa, which was apparently a very good place to hang for just about everyone in the NFL in the offseason, that he sold in 2013. But he lived in Tampa, and he's also still currently an investor in a restaurant called Roca, an Italian restaurant in Tampa, which I will tell you earned the first 10 from the Tampa Bay Times food critic ever. So this is a guy who's a restaurateur, he is a former resident, and now he is a current tight end of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I love it. They are all in this season. This isn't one of these deals where, all right, we're building. No, Brady and Gronk, and this isn't for the long term. This is for 2020. Let's see if they can get this thing done.
Yeah, usually a move like this, it will be shock and awe. But for me, this was like shock and awe. Damn, these guys are going to be good. I mean, if you think about what they're trying to build, they're trying to build a championship team right now. And listen, this is a week where we're talking about the draft, of course, but we're also talking about this Michael Jordan documentary, The Last Dance. And I believe that Tom Brady is moving just like Michael Jordan in his last season with the Bulls. It seems like instead of The Last Dance, he's going to put together some documentary years from now that'll come out, and it'll be called the last chance. You bring in Gronkowski. You have the wide receivers that you have. You have the tight end play. You have a coach that's really going to let it fly. I know, making a Tom Brady, Michael Jordan comparison, to some people it makes perfect sense. To other people it's blasphemy. But I tell you what, they are both the GOAT in their respective sports. And right now they're moving exactly the same. So Tom Brady is trying to send a message to the rest of the league that even at my age, I can still manipulate the chessboard in order for me to win. Tom Brady is doing it big. And I guarantee that this move with Gronk being there is going to take his offense another level.
Ooh, you're going to get big fonted.
I can't wait to see it, Nate. We got zombie Gronk, guys. He's back. And, you know, my first reaction, honestly, I'm not making a joke, I thought it was a fake report. I found myself counting. Now, how many P's are there in Rappaport? I don't want to get hooked by one of those, you know, Barry McWhat's-his-face. It's the real thing. It's the real deal. And then my reaction was, the Bucs just won draft week. The Bucs just made the first pick of the draft, and they drafted a Hall of Fame tight end. But really, guys, it's not just Tampa that got Gronk. America got Gronk. We got Gronk. This feels like our football stimulus bump. You know what I mean? And in a time right now when everybody's looking for entertainment and joy, we just got a pro wrestling champ from The Masked Singer who's taking his SI swimsuit model girlfriend and moving to Florida so he can bro out with his best buddy and win another Super Bowl. I want to spike my Clorox wipes and my sanitizer in my house right now. Can somebody please hit Hulk Hogan, I'm a Real American? Because I am more fired up right now. Gronk losing a year and returning to work has me more fired up than Saf losing an arm and returning to work. I am so fired up he is back. Gronk, I love you. God bless you, you big, beautiful bastard. Welcome back. Love you.
I think all Americans are echoing that very sentiment. We are coming together, even if you're in the NFC South, even if you have to face him. You gotta love it. I had Derwin James on Instagram Live yesterday, and he has to face Tampa this year, and he said he was excited because he wants to face it. He wants to see what that's all about. And remember, it's not just Gronk there. It's how do you defend any of them? How do you defend Chris Godwin? He's very young. Mike Evans is optimal at wide receiver. So now it's really a game changer, like Nate is saying. I think I missed most just the mental wavelength they were both on, like knowing where each other was at all times. I feel like when he left the game for the year, I was searching for that in Michael Thomas and Drew Brees, who had some of it, and Russell Wilson and Tyler Lockett displayed some of it. But there's experience there. So I would almost trade age and maybe some wear tear injuries for the experience those two have to be lock and step, especially living in times like we are. We see how many gaps we have every 3-hour show with things that are going on, not being on the same page. Those two can show up at any moment and be okay on the field, and I think that will be huge for their offense. What about the people who are trying to decide, Kyle, who won the deal? I hate when we do this because we won't know until the season starts or even after the season, yeah. But what intrigues you most about the deal that was made on both sides?
The Tampa side, by far. You know, Nate, you mentioned the Jordan thing, and I think a lot of people laughed when Brady signed with the Bucs and said, oh, this is Jordan to the Wizards. Okay, well, maybe it is, but what if Jordan took Scottie with him? And what if when he got there, Alonzo Mourning and Sean Kemp were already there? Because it starts to feel like this. I just wonder how far back this goes, guys. Does this go back a year? Does this go back 5 years? Was this a Zay Wataneo thing where Brady and Gronk said, someday we're going to get out of here together? Because it seems like Brady had this whole thing planned. This feels like an empire move to me. He did not go down there to mess around.
Yeah, and it's a platform change, too, because this is a Buccaneers team that was on prime time with an asterisk one time last year. Why an asterisk? It wasn't a game that was on Fox on Thursday night. It was just on the NFL Network in Week 2 against the Panthers in a rain-soaked, rain-delayed game that we all forget. It was Jameis versus Cam Week 2. Now, the Buccaneers, they're going to be on prime time 4 times, 5 times, 6 times. This is going to be Michaels and Collinsworth. This is going to be, Brady's going to be with Buck and Aikman probably just about every Sunday on Fox. Like, the Buccaneers become a primetime marquee team in the NFL when they were an afterthought for not just last year, but for the last decade.
Yeah, the revitalization of a franchise. You know, we're talking NBA, and I saw a meme yesterday. They said that Gronk and Tom Brady are more like Karl Malone and Gary Payton going to the Lakers. That's different. The Lakers, they were a story franchise. The Bucks, they haven't had success like that. And another difference is, Gary Payton and Karl Malone, they were searching for rings. Gronk and Tom Brady, they got the jewelry. So now they go there with that Super Bowl pedigree. They bring that type of energy. And yes, just like Schrager said, all of a sudden, the whole world, yes, I'm talking about globally, the whole world will be watching the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
That might be true, but they're also watching the Patriots on draft night to see what they're doing, what is the plan. And as far as the Pats, they got something back. Gronkowski wasn't going to come and play for them. So there's people who are saying that the New England Patriots won this trade. We'll see how it shakes out on the field and during the draft.
Rob Gronkowski. Rap Sheet has it the Patriots and Bucks have agreed to terms on a trade. Tampa gets Gronk and a 7th rounder and a 7th rounder in exchange for a 4th rounder. Sources say unbelievable. This from the agent, Drew Rosenhaus. Rob has agreed to play for Tampa this season. He will honor his current contract at this time. Okay. Gronk has taken his physical. It is a done deal, boys. This is one of those great pre-draft trades and one that, is it a surprise? Yes, it's a surprise, but not a shock, right, Greg Rose? Though Gronk's back just with a different theme than people expected.
I'm pretty shocked. I know there's been some thought maybe Gronk is going to come back at some point, but there wasn't a lot of people whispering about this 3 or 4 days ago. And to imagine that not only is Rob Gronkowski, the greatest tight end of all time, going to be back with, his quarterback, the greatest quarterback of all time, Tom Brady, with Bruce Arians, but that it's only going to cost them a 4th round pick. I don't think the Patriots had much they could do in the way of leverage. They're getting something for basically nothing. But if you're a Buccaneers fan, and for me, if you're a football fan, I do think it's just going to be fun, and it makes me all the more anxious for this season to actually happen on time.
I'm a little disappointed in the 4 of us. When we were trying to make heads or tails last week of the O.J. Howard trade rumors, none of us connected the dots with the pro wrestling heavyweight title holder and Tom Brady. And here he is. This Bucks offseason is basically Bruce Arians' football philosophy come to fruition. No risk it, no biscuit. Go all in on Tom Brady. Now go get Gronk. And the last time we saw Gronk, he was laboring through the 2018 season. Dan had some questions about whether he could separate from anyone in coverage. And he struggled, but in the AFC title game and the Super Bowl, he really put the offense on his back late in those games and carried them.
I think it's also
Oh, sorry, Mark. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say this is a player that, a year off probably did wonders for the overall physical makeup of Rob Gronkowski. And I've already got friends tweeting saying, is he possibly in football shape? I'm not worried about that. I'm not saying we're going to get, mid-career Rob Gronkowski. He's only 2 years older than Cameron Brate right now. He's 30. And if he's back at full health, I love this. I remember kicking off the offseason saying, beware of winning the offseason, that there is a team every year that seems to do that. And right around now at crescendos, well, the Bucks were not afraid or listening to anything I said back then. They've done it, and they're going to be lodged into 9 or 10 or 12 primetime games. So, Wes, don't worry about watching those Bucks uniforms in the midday sunlight.
That is
Listen how annoyed Mark is by this possibility. Listen, they've earned it, really. I mean, when you go and you get the most famous quarterback of all time, and now you get the most famous tight end of all time, you take them both off the Patriots tree, and everyone's talking about you. You get the primetime games. And Wes, what you said made me think. His last season, and I think that's an important part of this. People are going to pencil in Gronk to be, 2016 Gronk and this peak guy that's going to be a monster. He really did appear to be a player in decline for most of his last season in New England. Then they get the bye. He comes off the bye, and he's a huge player. They get another week off before the Super Bowl, and he has a big Super Bowl. That would be my only question, if that resurgence down the stretch was in some part due to getting that extra rest, and whether his body, while he's around the same age as Cameron Brate, this is a beat-up guy that's had all sorts of injuries throughout his career. Is he someone a year out of the game that's going to be able to stay healthy and be productive? But for a 4th-round pick, it's a no-brainer. It's another great move by Tampa.
Well, I think that's a fair question to ask, especially since O.J. Howard outplayed Gronk for most of that 2018 season. Howard was phenomenal until he went down with his own foot injury. Gronk had the high ankle sprain, if I remember. And unlike any other player I've ever seen in the NFL, he came back from major surgery after major surgery after major surgery stronger than he was before every time. And now he's 31, so it's fair to question what that's going to be like, or even if he's a major upgrade on O.J. Howard. But Tom Brady knows exactly where Gronk is on third down and in the red zone with the game on the line, and who knows if he knows where O.J. Howard is.
Well, it's telling to me that Bill Belichick would rather have a fourth-round pick than he would have O.J. Howard on a team that desperately needs a tight end. And, I mean, O.J. Howard, I don't know what's going on with this guy. They're going to try to move him to this point. But you're right, Wes. We should have read the tea leaves before. I think Gronk made it very clear 24 hours ago in the interview he had on that one other show where he basically said, I'm not just open to playing football again. I want to.
Put some respect on Andy Cohen's name.
Andy Cohen's show. Andy Cohen.
Andy Cohen went from the executive suite to a late night talk show host. Put some respect on Andy Cohen's name, Mark.
All right, I didn't realize I'm dealing with like two Andy Cohenites here. I mean, I don't disagree, but it's just I'm unfurling the information that I knew of.
I wonder. Here's the other part of it, and we're about to bring in Eric Tamposi. But Greg, I'll give you this a question. Gronk stepped away from the game. Always felt like not a great fit with the Bill Belichick regime in terms of the way he views life, the way he goes after things. But guess what? He had a good relationship for 8 or 9 years, whatever it was. Does he come back if Tom Brady comes back to New England? Or is this only happening because Tom Brady leaves town, goes down south to Florida with a player's coach? It feels like to me that Gronk is coming back potentially because Tom Brady left. And this is not a situation where the same thing would have happened if Brady would have stayed in New England.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, reading the reports, mentally playing for Belichick year after year, in addition to the physical problems. I mean, he fell in the draft because he had chronic back issues. And anyone who's watched Gronk kind of cringes every time he's hitting the lower back. And the back is the problem, and that's everything that's gone on. But he's got to be feeling better. He's feeling good enough to be wrestling. And the idea of going down south with Bruce Arians, I mean, that's the thing. It shows how flexible Bruce Arians is, too, that he's going to change his entire offensive philosophy, I think, for Rob Gronkowski. It makes it much more exciting if you're Gronk to come back. And if you're the Patriots, he had them over a barrel, really, because they had no cap room. If he had just unretired, they would have been over the cap. He knew he only had one team that he wanted to go with, which limits your leverage. And he's coming off of retirement. They got the same of him coming out of retirement as Brett Favre did when Brett Favre was almost an MVP candidate and was a quarterback. Marshawn Lynch got a 5th-round pick when he comes out of retirement. I'm not surprised they couldn't get much for him. They're probably happy they got anything for him, but I think you're right. I don't think he'd be playing for Bill Belichick.
How is this trade being received?
Well, it's very interesting, Steve, because I think a lot of people are wondering, why did they just make Gronk stay here and play for him? They had his contractual rights, 1 more year, $10 million, and that is just, it was never going to happen. Rob Gronkowski walked away from football a year or so ago because not only his body was breaking down, but mentally it had enough of the Patriot way and Bill Belichick and the way they coach here. It's not easy to play here. And obviously the end results have been fantastic. 9 trips to the Super Bowl, 6 Super Bowl victories, but it grates on you. So I think Rob tried to be the square peg in the round hole and tried to sort of fit into this mold for a long, long time. And at the end, he just didn't want to do it anymore. And he and Tom are so closely related that I think, with hindsight now being the benefit, we should have seen that this was coming, that Tom and Rob had been talking, and that Tom, as he said on the Howard Stern interview, he knew he wasn't coming back to the New England Patriots back in August. So that this has probably been in the works for some time.
Well, Mike, isn't this somewhat of a deft move for the Patriots? Yeah, emotionally, they're losing a great player, but they're getting back a 4th-round pick for a guy who wasn't going to play for them. Now they've got 2 4th-rounders, 2 3rd-rounders. To me, that looks like plenty of trade equity or draft capital, whichever one they want to use.
Yeah, Steve, you got something for nothing because, again, he wasn't going to play for you. He was going to play in one place only, and that's wherever Tom Brady went. So now he's in Tampa, and you're able to take a 7th-rounder in Gronk, again, an asset that was just going to sit there and rot. He wasn't going to play for you, and you pick up a 4th-round pick, and this is a team that doesn't have a 2nd-round pick. So I know Ian Rappaport talks about using a premium pick on a quarterback in this draft for the Patriots. Well, in my mind, they only have one premium pick, and that's their 1st-round pick at 23. Can they find a way to get into that 2nd round? I think it's something that they need to do because, quite frankly, they got a fair amount of holes for a team that went 12-4 and is just a couple seasons removed from a Super Bowl championship. So that fourth might give them a little bit more collateral to find their way back into the second round with the number of picks they have in the third and the fourth.
Okay, knowing what Brady and Gronk have done for years together, now they're going to Tampa Bay to a team that is loaded with offensive weapons. How do you think that works out fitting into that situation that they have with the Buccaneers?
Steve, I think it's actually a really good place for Rob because he's not going to be the primary guy. That's Evans. That's Godwin. Cameron Brate and O.J. Howard are still there. And granted, if Gronk is Gronk, he supersedes those two guys, but he doesn't have to be the focal point. He doesn't have to run down the seam 5 or 6 times a game and expose that 6'6" frame to the shots that have beaten him up over the years and made it very difficult for him to be the guy that you remember in 2011, 2012. The guy that we saw at the end was far from that. I don't want to say he was washed because it's hard to know what he's going to look like a year later, but I think he caught 47 passes in his final season with the Patriots and wasn't the same sort of influencer that he was. So now he goes there. Coverage is going elsewhere. He's going to be one-on-one. They don't need him to block 65 plays. I think this is good for Rob Gronkowski for his physical and mental state. And of course, he's going to love playing for Bruce Arians.
Every life is a story, and every story has its own beginnings. On living room rugs, tiny backyards, broad, painted fields. All across America, these are the stories that bond communities. The ones that evolve in towns on Fridays in the fall, through humble beginnings that plant the first seeds of ambition. Through tastes of the game that change them forever. And so their stories unfold on these fields. Their lives become tests of how far their gifts can take them as they emerge ever more impressively in college coliseums on Saturdays, while eyeing the brightest spotlight of all on Sundays.
He's going deep with the pass down the middle, and it is caught!
45-40, 35 sliding left 30.
Stiff arms a man, spins off another at the 40.
Breaks another tackle to the 10, at the 10, at the 5. Touchdown!
Born leaders with powerful arms,
Got a man open, touchdown! What a play!
gifted playmakers with steady hands, talented teammates reaching for the next pinnacle together, powerful linemen whose aspirations are only the start of their connection. When they draw closest, the tests intensify, but the desire of the very best is built to match every obstacle. Their talents shaped to bloom fullest under the highest pressures. Now, at last, they arrive at the doorstep of their ultimate ambitions, with proof that their skill and their will are worthy of the grandest stage of all.
With the first pick.
A new beginning awaits, a new chapter in the stories they're writing for themselves at the 2012 National Football League Draft.
Welcome inside Radio City Music Hall to the 2012 NFL Draft presented by Verizon.
listen, download NFL Mobile by calling ** NFL. There is the new star of the Indianapolis Colts, Andrew Luck, with his dad and his entourage getting set to be named the first overall choice of the 2012 draft. No pressure. You also have to fill Peyton Manning's shoes in Indianapolis. Rich Eisen along with Marshall Faulk, Steve Mariucci, my playmaker Michael Irvin, and our maven Mike Mayock. We had a trade about 45 minutes ago. The Browns moving up one spot at the top of this draft. What does it cost them? A 4th, 5th, and 7th later in the draft. Mike Mayock, we know it's Trent Richardson according to our Michael Lombardi. We know the first 3 players in this draft. It's an interesting draft nonetheless.
We might be out of here in time for dinner this keeps up. I don't think so.
As much as we try not to tip the picks, it is what it is. The commissioner of the National Football League is getting set to start this thing off.
Good evening. Welcome to prime time in the 2012 NFL Draft. This is an exciting night for our players, for our teams, and for you, the fans. The season begins tonight, so let's kick it off. The 2012 NFL Draft is officially open. The Indianapolis Colts are on the clock.
Rich. All right. Rich. The countdown's on.
You better get on them.
There are the fans in Indianapolis. There's the war room. Write it down. Someone get on the phone. Oh, is that Gregson just on it? There you go.
With the first pick in the 2012 NFL Draft, the Indianapolis Colts select Andrew Luck, quarterback, Stanford.
And there we go. He's got to hang up with his boss and hug his mom. A neat moment for a young man of a former quarterback of the National Football League, a former quarterback teammate of Peyton Manning's dad, Archie. He is now getting the pin. His mom is pinning him with the blue horseshoe, and the handshakes are all around. As what we've been talking about all last season as Peyton Manning sat out for the Colts, wondering who the Colts would select, what would happen with Peyton Manning's future, what would happen with the #1 overall pick should Indianapolis get it. We are finally here on draft night, and Marshall Faulk, Peyton Manning's successor, is in fact Andrew Luck, with Peyton Manning gone from Indianapolis.
It is, and from this point forward, Andrew Luck, like I said earlier, has to be Andrew Luck. He cannot be Peyton Manning. He cannot try to replace Peyton Manning. He has to go and be the quarterback that he is, and hopefully Ryan Grigson and the Indianapolis Colts can build around this guy the infrastructure that Peyton Manning had around him.
And the interesting thing is he's not going to replace Peyton in exactly the same scheme and system. Even though they're very similar in many ways, he's going to have his own system. Chuck Pagano is going to build around him in a certain way. Maybe he'll be a little bit more balanced to help this kid out. It's going to be a building process. We all know that. But the fans are sophisticated in Indianapolis, and they're going to enjoy the building of this program around this guy.
It's important that the system is similar because we have to have at least one of the guys very comfortable right off the top, and that will be Reggie Wayne coming back to give Andrew Luck that comfort. Hey man, let me tell you where to throw this ball, how to make these plays, because it'll help his maturation process, Mike, much faster.
Let's take a look at the son of a former NFL quarterback, see what he brings to the table. And first and foremost, play action. Slides in the pocket, moves up, eyes downfield. He is so far ahead of most college quarterbacks in that critical area. He feels the pocket, he slides, play action. Look where his eyes are. Holds the safety, he knows he's coming back to his tight end, drops it in over the corner, touchdown Stanford. Now, how athletic is this kid? When I tell you it's similar to Cam Newton, look at him open the hips, throw it back to the drag tight end to his left. Again, to his right. His numbers at the combine were very similar to Cam Newton's. This kid is an amazing athlete. He's 6'4", 235 pounds. Watch this, Michael. If you don't believe me, watch that. That's him catching the football. Catching the football.
One hand.
One-handed.
And he becomes the latest quarterback out of Stanford, drafted first overall. Bobby Garrett, first overall pick out of the Browns back in 1954. And then, of course, Jim Plunkett, selected by the Patriots back in 1971. We all know about John Elway. And that brings us to the present day. Oh, nice John Elway look right there. At least we don't show him as a third baseman for the Yankees, right? But Elway, and then now Andrew Luck, who is an Indianapolis Colt. Interestingly enough, again, the Washington Redskins just made their pick. About 4 minutes and change into them being on the clock. But Andrew Luck is out there on the stage being introduced as an Indianapolis Colt the day after Peyton Manning's photograph, his large picture on the stadium that he essentially